going, everybody? So Mission Impossible Fallout comes out this upcoming weekend, which makes for 6 installments in this franchise since it started back in 1996, based on the show from the 60s. But it's really impressive how this series has gone on for so long and makes such great installments, because most of the films in this franchise have actually gotten better over time, whereas most franchises, when you either think there's fatigue going on, where they get worse each time they make a film, but it's actually the opposite with Mission Impossible, which makes it so impressive. But since I saw Fallout last night, I'll leave my link to my review down below in the description. If you haven't checked it out yet, definitely do so. But since I did, what perfect time is any to rank all 6 Mission Impossible films from worst to best? It's just my personal ranking. If you have a different list, feel free to leave down below what you thought, how you would rank the Mission Impossible franchise, even if you haven't seen Fallout. Definitely let me know how you'd rank the other 5 films. Several of these are actually really hard to rank because I just like a lot of these films so much in this franchise, but without further ado, let's get right into this list. Coming in at number 6, I have Mission Impossible 2, which isn't like a huge surprise because it is kind of like the black sheep of the franchise everybody tries to forget about. I actually did a collab video with one of my friends, Douglas Beamer. If you want to check that out, I'll leave that in the link down below. That's more like further in-depth review as far as that goes. But it really is like this, black sheep of the franchise. John Woo kind of took this whole franchise in a weird direction based, there was more spy elements in the first Mission Impossible, and then they went full-blown action, balls to the wall, crazy Matrix style stuff, and it was just really weird, and just contrast in tone between this and the original. They really kind of make Ethan Hunt more of like James Bond in this movie, and the plot actually seems more like a James Bond kind of plot because he has to stop this virus from getting out and spreading and killing a bunch of people around the world. And he's got, fast cars, he's sleeping with, Thandie Newton, and it's just like, it just felt very weird coming off of the original Mission Impossible. And not only that, but it's just this film, it is action balls to the wall, but the plot is really dull for a lot of the movie, and there is some action that's good, and the stunts are good like every Mission Impossible film, but it's just very lackluster compared to the other films in this franchise. Dougray Scott's also not a very good villain. But yeah, it's just a very lackluster installment in this franchise that's kind of skippable. If you don't really want to watch this movie, you really don't have to. It's like the only movie in the entire franchise where he's not going rogue. He's actually doing a mission for the IMF, which is kind of cool, I guess. But otherwise, you don't really need to watch this film unless you're a completionist. Coming in at number 5, I have Mission Impossible 3, which, funny enough, is the directorial debut of a certain famous writer-director, J.J. Abrams. Back when this came out in 2006, this was the only, he had only done Lost and Alias, the famous, show with Jennifer Garner. But, he didn't have this this huge status as he does now, where he's rebooted several other franchises like Star Trek and Star Wars. Well, he actually did a pretty solid job for this being his directorial debut, and I can see why he became such a huge star afterwards. I appreciate that J.J. Abrams kind of steered the course back on this franchise, because it probably was going to go down a really weird road if they kept going on the path that they were leading on with Mission Impossible 2, with this whole full-blown, over-the-top action stuff that Ethan Hunt was doing in that. This one's a lot more spy, like it should be, the Mission Impossible franchise, with some action. There's some good action scenes in this as well. Also, some really good team elements, because Simon Pegg, I think this is the first film he's in of the franchise, and I just really like Simon Pegg as an actor. But casting Philip Seymour Hoffman as this evil arms dealer villain was such a perfect casting. He was such a great actor. It's unfortunate that he's gone now, but just the opening interrogation scene in this film alone is probably one of my favorite scenes in any of the Mission Impossible franchise still to this day, and it sets the stage for how awesome and action-packed this film is going to be, because this film has so many fun action scenes that there's just so many to count. But yeah, I still like this film. It's only lower on the list because there's so many other better films. The only one I really don't like is Mission Impossible 2. I actually really enjoy pretty much every other installment. Coming in at number 4, I have Mission Impossible, the one that started it all. Even to this day, it's still a really great spy movie. It's not as over-the-top action stunt-wise as the later entries, but it's still a really great spy movie. Ethan Hunt, I don't think, shoots a gun in this entire movie, which is drastic when you compare it to like the second one where he's shooting guns and full-out blazing the whole time. But I really like the simple, just spy elements in this film. Brian De Palma just did such a great job just kickstarting this franchise, this whole spy franchise. I didn't expect to even be going on still 20 years later, and I don't think he probably did either. But there's just so many great scenes with the spy elements, the tension that's built up, like the famous scene where Tom Cruise is dangling, and you don't know what's going to happen. It's a very tense scene. It's actually one of the more memorable tense scenes from that film, but it's still a great spy movie. There's no crazy stuff that you'd expect like you see in action movies today, but it's still a fun time even 22 years later. Coming in at number 3, I have Mission Impossible Rogue Nation. Now this was a tough choice to make because I really love these top 3 films, But Rogue Nation was really great. I mean, they facing off on the Syndicate, based off what happened at the end of Ghost Protocol. The Syndicate's finally around in this franchise, and this film is just so amazing with its action. Christopher McQuarrie, his first film in the franchise because he directed Fallout as well, did such a great job with this film, and I can see why they brought him back for Fallout, because this is such a great, tense, action-packed thriller. There's actually a lot more humor in this film, which kind of caught me off guard, but I actually enjoyed it. And also, as far as stunts go, other than like the Burj Khalifa and Ghost Protocol, I think this has one of the best stunts in the whole franchise, with him climbing on, hanging onto that plane as it's soaring into the air. Like, Tom Cruise is freaking crazy, man. I don't know how he does all this stuff, even though he's pushing almost 60, because he's 56 right now. But that scene's great. I mean, most of the action and stunts, it seems like they just go balls to the wall. Each time they make a film, they just try to up them, up the ante, make it even more insane. I also really enjoyed the addition of Rebecca Ferguson to this franchise. She's a very underrated actress. I feel like she doesn't get as much credit as she should, but her character in this is really great. I mean, she actually has she's really mysterious. You don't really know where her allegiance lies, and a lot of her backstory and her motivations are kind of left vague on purpose, which makes her more interesting. But she's just as badass as Ethan Hunt or any of them in this film. She actually gets, her moments to shine as well. Also, most of the films in this franchise have very, at least solid antagonists, but I really like Sean Harris as the antagonist in this film. He's just very sinister and menacing, and he just looks like he's a creepy bad guy. He's like the perfect casting for this role. I don't know where I'd rank him as far as villains go in the franchise, but he's a very solid villain. The Syndicate's great. I'm glad that they're going with the Syndicate now in this franchise, at least for the time being. But yeah, really solid, great film. I really love Rogue Nation. I just want to see Christopher McQuarrie do more of these films. I don't care if he's already done 2. I want to just see him keep doing them. Coming in at number 2, I have Mission Impossible Ghost Protocol. Brad Bird did such a great job just pretty much reinvigorating the franchise. I mean, Mission Impossible 3 was really good, but 4 was like on a whole nother level. It's like he pretty much brought out the best of Tom Cruise we had seen in forever. I mean, Tom Cruise has kind of been coasting for a while, and this is like put him back on the map as like superstar, A-list status action hero. Plus, the story in this is really top notch. The IMF gets shut down because they get implicated for the bombing on the Kremlin, so because of that, they gotta go rogue and clear their name, and somehow. I mean, most of these films actually involve them going rogue in some way, but just in this film, it's just much more fascinating. A lot of the team elements, I think, work the best in this film. I mean, Jeremy Renner was also a really great addition to the cast. I mean, he's kind of like brought on as you would think he's going to be the eventual replacement to Tom Cruise if Tom Cruise ever does step away from the Mission Impossible franchise, which I kind of doubt he's going to, because he's going to keep pumping these out until he's not able to anymore. But he's still a really good part of this film. I really like Jeremy Renner. It's really disappointing how his role kind of got diminished in Rogue Nation compared to Ghost Protocol. This film also has some of my favorite action and stunts. I mean, Tom Cruise climbing the Burj Khalifa, the tallest building in the world, is probably my favorite stunt in the entire franchise. It's filmed so well. I mean, especially if you see it in like a big screen, like an IMAX screen. Because I remember watching this when it came out in IMAX, just being amazed at how awesome this scene looked. And he actually climbed the building. He scaled it. It wasn't a stunt double. It was friggin' Tom Cruise on the side of the Burj Khalifa doing that. And it's really tense. You don't know, it looks like anything could go wrong in that moment. And it's just crazy to see Tom Cruise up in, 50 years old climbing this giant building. And I just really love that stunt. I mean, Tom Cruise is a madman, but you gotta love the guy. But yeah, other than those, I mean, it's just such a great action-packed film. I mean, it's like non-stop action throughout most of the runtime. It's just such a exciting film to watch. I mean, it's probably the most rewatched Mission Impossible film in the franchise, for me anyways. Coming in at number 1 is the most recent installment in the Mission Impossible franchise, Mission Impossible Fallout. I'm not just saying that because it's the one I just recently saw. I think this might be one of the best action films I've ever seen. It's just so well crafted. Christopher McQuarrie comes back to do this one. Henry Cavill's, he's just such a great character in this film. They're dealing with the Syndicate still in this film. Tom Cruise is probably at the best level he's been since Ghost Protocol and Rogue Nation. He just keeps stepping up his game. The stunts are better. The action's better. It's just an all-out amazing film. The action actually is pretty brutal. I mean, some of the scenes that Henry Cavill has in this film are just so brutal. He's a huge, bulky assassin. And I really like the plot. I mean, but it's like very standard plot, with them just trying to race against the clock to stop something, because that's kind of like the gist of most of the Mission Impossible plots. But the whole gang is back. I mean, I really like the team element. The team in this is just as good as it has been in the last couple films. Somehow it's just, they keep bumping up the action. Like, it's more high-octane action than ever before. I mean, I just think this is the best film in the franchise. Tom Cruise, somehow at 56 years old, keeps making these crazy stunts, you know, flying helicopters, doing these halo jumps, you know, doing these action scenes with Henry Cavill. It's just such a fun movie. I mean, it's a little long. It's 2.5 hours long, but it's paced very well. It's very well written. The dialogue between all the characters is very believable. There's no cheesy line of dialogue in the whole film. There's actually like genuine twists and turns throughout the plot that you don't see coming. It's just such an all-around amazing summer blockbuster that I feel you'd be missing out on if you don't check it out. So, yeah, I mean, that was just my list for Mission Impossible films. I mean, my worst to best. You don't got to agree. It's okay if you don't, because I know that a lot of the last couple films, they're debatable. They're very debatable, these last couple, because they seem to keep getting better and better. But let me know what you thought of, you know, my list for Mission Impossible. What do you think of Mission Impossible? You know, where would you rank them? How would you rank all 6 films? Or 5 films if you haven't seen Fallout yet? Let me know in the comments section down below. Also, feel free to leave a like, hit the subscribe button, check out, you know, keep up to date with all my movie reviews, rankings, unboxings, and more. But until the next time, I'll see you guys later.